We all have.
I got it. The answer is Carolyn has the button. There we go. We are recording. Okay, guys, I think we're approaching 3:05, so I think we'll get this thing kicked off. George, Andrew, you good?
Yep.
Raring to go.
All right. Oh, sorry, George 1 and George 2. We're going to have a naming thing. George B, George F, something, but we'll work it out as we go. Well, hey everyone, it's Friday the 11th of September, and this is Qlik Virtual Meetup Scotland episode 10. Bit of a landmark episode. I didn't think when we started this that we'd get to 10 episodes, but lockdown has taken us in this direction, and we're just having a lot of fun with it still. So we're really happy to welcome you to the Data Dark Side edition. It's the edition of all the Georges. We've got the George Lucas of the dark side. We've got the George Firican of the dark data, and we've got the George Beaton of presenting fame. So we're in a good place for this episode. And as it says there, it's George, myself, and Andrew who are kind of guiding you through the episode. We also have episode 11 lined up for the 25th of September, which is also a Friday. You can register for that with tiny.cc QVMS EP11, and we'll pop that link in the chat as the meeting goes on. So off we go. So we've got a really great lineup for you today. We're really pleased to bring these two guys along. First of all, on his request, Mike Tarallo, a returning friend of the show, the third-time visitor, is going to talk to us about business logic in Qlik Sense, which is actually a detailed subject rather than just a generic thing. I think it was only released a few days ago, Mike, is that right, with the September release? Yes, that's correct. So it's great to have Mike on, and he gets the pleasure to go first this time, because for Mike's been squeezed a few times and we feel bad about that. So he's back on first this time around. For keynote number 2, we've got one of 2 Georges on the call. We might have more in the attendees, I don't know. But we've got George Firican, data governance expert, and someone that I've met a couple of months ago through during COVID times of lots of things that are happening online. And he's going to talk to us today about dark data and what it is and how the effects that it has on your data lives. So we're really excited to have George here as well. You guys will get a chance to grill our great speakers with Q&As after they've finished their talks, and then we'll just wrap up and talk about the guests that we have for our next meetup, because we're all lined up. We are queued actually for the next 2 or 3 episodes, so we're in a good shape there. And then we'll let you guys go and enjoy your Fridays, mornings or afternoons, wherever you may be. So thank you for being here. We appreciate it. So you probably all know who we are, but we'd like to just say for a couple of minutes who we are, just in case you've not been here before. My name is Brian Bouden. I'm a Qlik luminary and have been like 5 times now. I'm also the managing director at DataGlow IT. Really proud to be a member of the Qlik luminary and meetup communities, and extremely happy to be here with my co-captains, George Beaton, phoning in from the car no less, and Andrew McIlwright, who I believe has just returned from leave for a week. So I'll throw it over to George to say a few words. Off you go, George.
Thank you very much, Brian. Yeah, even on a trip from London up to Scotland, wouldn't miss this. Wouldn't miss any of them actually. So yeah, dialing in from the car today. So yeah, my name's George Beaton. I'm 3 times Qlik luminary, so not quite the same heritage as Brian there, but 3 times. Will we make a 4th, hopefully? I'm a senior director at FTI Consulting. I've been there for the last 1.5 years. We run a data analytics team there, and we get involved with more and more predictive analytics, actually, is the way that the industry seems to be going for us, certainly. Yeah, really looking forward to hearing 2 speakers today. So with that, I'll hand over to Andrew.
Thanks, George. So I'm Andrew McElrick, Service Delivery Manager for Differentia Consulting. Officially on vacation today, the last day of my holiday. I did drive down from Oban in the Scottish Highlands this morning through the dreadful rain and flooding, you could imagine monsoon weather, to arrive home to sunny blue skies just here in Glasgow. So it was hopefully worth the journey this morning, but I'm looking forward to the two speakers. I don't know George number 2, but I'm looking forward to his talk, and obviously I've heard Mike talk on a number of occasions, and I'm looking forward to hearing about business logic and Qlik sense, so this should be a good show. So I'll pass back to Brian.
Thanks very much, Andrew. And what you gathered from my two colleagues there is that I'm clearly the least committed captain, because I'm not phoning in from a car and I haven't had a huge journey. I've just been sitting here waiting for things to kick off. But make of that what you will. But it's a great team, great to work with you guys, and really proud that we've managed to make episode number 10 of this adventure that we're on. Long may it continue. Speaking of adventure number 10, adventure number 9 was 2 weeks ago, and this was a really quite cool one as well. We had Patrick Nordstrom on from Qlik to talk to us about ideation, some of the big improvements that Qlik have made with ideation, including the community board that's up there now, some internal apps that they're using to trace those ideation ideas, and really just making that visibility a more public thing, so that when you feed an idea into Qlik, Andrew, I know that you've fed in a few and they've had feedback as well. So it's really great to see Qlik not resting on their laurels and taking community feedback to put into their products. We also had Sean Price and the Datadog, who you can just about see lingering in the corner of the video there. Sean has had a long career in public services and implementing business intelligence and analytics solutions, and his enthusiasm is infectious. And we had a great time having Sean on the show last week and just showing how he kind of produced the solution for Avon and Somerset Police as well, and how the kind of key tenets of that solution was, and the enthusiasm was great to have. So we were really pleased to have another good attendance last week, and if you missed that and you're happy, you want to have a look at the recording again, I don't think we publicised the recording too well on social media this time, so it's QVMS EP9 Rec, and you'll be able to get that out of the chat shortly as well.
Ryan, can I just jump in for a second? Sorry to cut you off there. The recording is also so we now have a YouTube channel for historic recordings. Part of the reason for that is that some of these recordings are so big that we were struggling to get them on the website, but they're linked through the website as well. So the website is qlikvirtualmeetupscotland.co.uk. You can also see all of our back catalogue of videos there as well.
Yeah, we'll soon be able to do that thing where we can start doing, Fab Fridays and stuff like that, where we can point back at our old videos that we did. So it's quite exciting to reach episode 10. And we wouldn't be here without these people. So Andrew and George and I are both part of the Luminary and Meetup programs, and we wouldn't be where we were without Carolyn, Gillian, and Shelley. So Carolyn, do you want to say like a few words about the Meetup and Luminary programs for those that don't know about it?
Sure. Yeah. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm the first picture, Carolyn, and I work with Gillian and Shelley and a couple other people on the customer marketing team at Qlik. Specifically, I help run the Meetup program, the Luminary program, and a couple other smaller advocacy programs. But our big two are Meetups and Luminaries. So it's really great to kind of see those two come together in this specific meetup, with all of our meetup captains also being Luminaries. So it's really cool to see. So just for those who aren't familiar, our Luminary program are our top Qlik advocates coming together kind of in a really big user group kind of setting, where Luminaries are selected after they apply as being kind of the best and the most passionate advocates of Qlik, and they provide great feedback for us and help Qlik and top Qlik product marketing people and execs move Qlik in the right direction a little bit. So we also have meetups, which are really small user groups all over the world. We're global. We have about 61 meetup groups now, which is great. You know, this is a newer program, and it started with a much smaller number of groups, and we have over 10,000 members. And with COVID, everyone going online, we've seen those numbers grow exponentially, and the Scotland meetup group has been, you know, just so great in getting that ball rolling with online meetups and really helping our program move and adjust with the times. So that's a little bit of those programs, and thanks to the Scottish meetup captains for really spearheading virtual meetups.
Yeah, thanks, Carolyn. We just seem to be going on and on, but as always, you know, it's great. I think the move to Zoom has been really good so far as well. Actually, we've had some good feedback on that, so it's, you know, it's great to have you guys supporting us along the way, and hopefully we're not done yet. So thanks very much, Carolyn. So without further ado, I'm going to move on to our first guest. So Mike Tarallo, friends of the show will know that Mike is a friend of the show for us. We've known him a long time, and he's done some great stuff for us already. Our first third-time guest. You might also know him under his retro gamer tag on Twitter as well. And Mike, I've just called you the demo god of business logic, so there's nothing to live up to there at all.
Yeah, I was just saying, yeah.
Yeah. I just thought I'd ease you into it and just, you know, go for it from there. So, Mike, all jokes aside, I'm more than happy to pass over to you for the to run first for a change.
Absolutely, I appreciate
Welcome, mate.
that.
Welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys as always, and always love to share my knowledge for Qlik and retro gaming, and to spend this time with you guys today. So how much time do I have so I can make sure that I'm respectful of the time management?
Yeah, you've got about half an hour before questions.
Okay, that'll be fine. Perfect. Okay. Thank you for setting the bar for the business logic demo god, considering the product was only released yesterday, but you know,
well, you know,
I did have some time to play around with it and prep. So the way I'm going to start out this presentation is I actually got to kick it off with a couple of, you know, core competencies regarding Qlik Sense and augmented intelligence, just to set the stage. Then we're going to go through a completed live demonstration, and then we'll go into the actual business logic demonstration. So let me just share my screen. I got multiple screens to share. Where's the one that I want to share? Okay, screen one is going to be the one with Brian on it. There we go. Okay, so now you should see my PowerPoint. And now we're going to swap. Okay, you guys should see a full range of user experiences. Can we verify that? Is that a yes, no?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
that's a yes.
All right, perfect. So this is just setting the stage, understanding the core competency that where business logic is actually going to come into play. Okay, so by now, if you have not worked with Qlik Sense, you know, you should know it is the most complete solution for what we're calling third generation analytics. And we've inserted the term augmented analytics because we're not only working with the computer itself and the algorithms and the sophistication behind these programs that help you create analytics, but at the same time, you're dealing with the human intuition and human interaction as well. So that's where the term augmented comes from. So unlike like a one-size-all or a one-size-fits-all approach or bolt-on AI, Qlik Sense supports analytics use cases across the organization, and it takes you from data to insight. And this includes a variety of capabilities, which includes self-service visualization, analytics and discovery, guided analytics, dashboards, something we're calling search-based visual analysis, conversational analytics now with our new Insight Advisor chat, which you'll see that as well, mobile analytics, and also the ability to customize and embed analytics into your own applications. And then we also have reporting and alerting. Okay, so it covers the full spectrum of business analytic needs. So across these use cases, though, there is a component that we like to call your digital assistant, if you will. And this is the Insight Advisor. Okay, now many people don't understand or may not understand and may not even know it's there, But this utility or this tool enhances all of these capabilities across all of these use cases. Okay, and the Insight Advisor basically will help accelerate creation, allow you to answer questions a lot easier, helps you build out the approaches for your analytics. And that's what you're going to see how Business Logic helps tailor Insight Advisor. Okay, so that's the first thing you understand. We got a bunch of capabilities and use cases that are possible within QlikSense, but at the same time, there is this utility or tool under the covers known as Insight Advisor that can help you. Okay, just keep it at that point. Now, Business Logic itself, okay, if I had to sum this up the easiest way possible, it makes Insight Advisor smarter. Okay, in other words, when you're asking questions through conversational analytics, when you're using visual search-based analytics, when you're using auto chart recommendations, just simple drag and drop, you want the results to be relevant to your particular business problem or your business question. So there is some automatic setup that happens, and this is done by automatically scanning the data, automatically looking at the data values, the field names, the types, correlations, and basically produces these automatic logic results. In other words, the quantitative amounts, and if a value is a measure or a dimension, etc. Now that can be tailored, and that's where Business Logic comes in. Okay, and that's Business Logic makes the results more relevant. Okay, so under the covers we have this Qlik cognitive engine. Okay, and the cognitive engine provides what we call context-aware insights based off of the machine learning and delivering these information over time from your use of this. So at the same time, not only is Insight Advisor producing these results, but it's also learning from your behavior. So as you drag and drop, and as you change aggregations, for example, well, I don't want to summarize this measure, I'm averaging this measure. Well, it's going to remember that, and the next time you ask a question, it'll remember, hey, the last time you took this field or this measure, you used an average aggregation. So I'm going to recommend the average aggregation this time. Okay, so it's learning, and this is what we call precedent-based machine learning. So the cognitive engine handles all of this and basically allows the Insight Advisor to get smarter over time, basically delivering these more relevant suggestions and more powerful context-aware results. Okay, it learns a number of factors, includes behavior and intent and feedback, analytical context, and basically also, don't forget, it leverages the power of the associative engine for a complete view of the data with unique perspective. So if you guys aren't aware of the associative engine, that could be a conversation for another time. I mean, there's a lot of information that's on there, but basically allowing you to also see the hidden results that you might not be able to see with typical query-based tools, for example. Okay, so let's start out with just a quick example just to see how it is. And what I'm going to do, so you can see how this works, is I'm just going to jump right in, and we're just going to use an existing app. And right now, some of these capabilities are available in our SaaS deployment, software as a service deployment, but other features are being ported over to the Windows experience as well, is what we're also calling the client managed environment. This is available inside the hub, and you'll see there's a button across the top, Ask Insight Advisor. Okay, so Ask Insight Advisor, or when you hear the term Insight Advisor, think of this as your digital assistant for all things AI, in this case, augmented intelligence. So depending on how I want to ask questions, it also depends on my sophistication level with business intelligence tools or data analytics tools. I might be comfortable using natural language. Okay, conversational analytics deals with our Insight Advisor chat, which is available here by simply pressing this button. Okay, so this demonstration today is not going to be on Insight Advisor chat fully, but it's to show you that when I get into Business Logic, you can create more relevant conversational analytics simply. Okay, so again, depending on the sophistication of the user, I have these quick buttons here. This could help guide me into asking questions. So just to give you an example, if I click apps, it shows me the apps inside my environment that are available or enabled for chat. There's a way of disabling this or enabling it. It'll show me all of the measures and the dimensions that are available inside a particular app that I choose. It'll also show me the dimensions that are available. Okay, and this is automatically fed through the scanning process of the data and the app, and that's all this information could also be tailored. But let's just say I'm interested in just saying how many customers this year. Okay, so you see I'm asking a question, but Insight Advisor knows that I'm looking for a count of customers and within a time period context, okay? And the way it knows that is by, again, sophisticated algorithms scanning and learning your data values and then producing those results. But later when we get into business logic, when you see that happen, you can customize and tailor these particular questions and results to become more relevant. So at this time, I didn't make any changes to this. It knew right off the bat that this year was a date range from January 1st to December 31st, and that the number of customers is 73. Okay, and you can see right here, we even provide some feedback here to kind of show you the context that there's a measure called customers. And you can see it's looking at this year, which is filtering on order date. So this is kind of giving you that validation that the question I'm asking is using these particular values and date ranges. Now, I might want to say something about how many customers this year purchased baby wear. Now, asking that question produces a different result, showing me 34 customers between that date range selected baby wear. Okay, so we're adding more context through this conversation. I can switch and just say, how about sportwear? And what's happening here is just like a regular conversation, it remembers that we're talking about this year. Just like when you're speaking with somebody, you have a pre-notion of the previous elements in the conversation that you discussed about. You don't keep qualifying every question. You have that assumption or that context already there in your brain. Insight Advisor does that as well. So you can see here it says customers is 46 for this range for sportwear. Okay, so it just changed the context. I could change the measure and just say, how about sales? And what this is going to do is pose a new question and now show me sales, because what we did was we changed the measure. We're no longer looking at count of customers, now looking at total sales. And you can get more sophisticated. I can say, show me top 5 products, or I can say, show me top 5 products by sales this year. And what it's going to do then is take that context and then produce a visualization for sales for the top 5 products for this year. So we're putting back information not only in the form of a narrative, but also now showing me a visualization of this. Okay, so all of this leads into the power of the cognitive engine and Insight Advisor, but at the same time, there's stuff that happens under the covers to this to happen. Some of it is automatic, meaning that once you load the data enable chat, a lot of this happens automatically, but there might be results that you need to tailor and change that behavior of, and that's where business logic comes in. Okay, so this element that you see here, Insight Advisor Chat, is just one of the entryways into accelerating creation and answering your questions. Now, when you work with inside the QlikSense Hub, you also have what's called search-based visual analysis. I'm going to show you that next. So what we're going to do here is we could actually explore this further by clicking on that link, and it'll actually bring me into the app that I'm asking those questions on. It populates the search-based visual analysis. And not only does it show me my top 5, but now it shows me other results that might be relative or relevant to my question. So now I can see additional results, as well as any existing charts that were in here that might relate to my question. Okay, so that's the power automatically now bringing us from Insight Advisor Chat directly into the Insight Advisor that's available in the hub. So what we're going to do now is we're going to completely clear context from here, clear my results, and you're going to see there is a input bar here where you could ask a question. Now there's also a button here called Generate Insights. Okay, so generating insights basically just automatically scans the data values. You can see the fields in the list, and this is going to come in handy when I show you business logic. But basically these are available to start accelerating the creation and answering your questions. So again, here I can just say, you know, how many customers, and you can see as I'm typing, it's automatically populating and filling in these using a type ahead and also showing me relationships. Okay, how many customers? Answer the question. Number of customers is 87. How many customers this year? Applies a date range. Okay, so the same experience from Insight Advisor Chat is also available through search-based visual analysis. Now, at the same time, to make things easier too, you can just select fields So for example, I can say, well, I'm interested in looking at sales figures by country code. Okay, and it starts automatically producing those charts for you, and then you could add these charts to your sheets and start building out your dashboard. Okay, so this is automatic chart recommendations. If I go into a sheet, just to give you an example, and I go into my fields, if I just grab a measure and drop it onto my canvas, it automatically creates a KPI, a key performance indicator visualization for me. You can see that over here, there is something called chart suggestions turned on. This is the power of Insight Advisor and the cognitive engine using the recommendations based off of what it's learned. So if I grab, for example, a dimension, in this case, category name, and drop it onto the same chart, now creates a bar chart. If I grab another measure, in this case here, if we have, let's see, do I have costs or margin, and drop it onto this chart here, it now creates a scatter plot because it's doing a correlation between two measures. Okay, so I think by now, based off what I showed you between Insight Advisor Chat, visual-based search, and chart recommendations, you understand that I didn't have to build any visualizations, okay, or pose any type of queries to get my answers. All I did was ask questions in a normal conversation, or simply drag and dropped, or use a simple search. Okay, but under the covers, there's something that drives that, and that's business logic. And that's what we're going to go into now, so I could show you how that works. And what I've done, of course, is create an oversimplification of this because it even helped me understand it and how it works. So what we're going to do for this is we're just going to go right into the hub, and I'm just going to create a brand new app. You can see here a new analytics app, and we'll just call this Scottish Meetup, and click Create. And then we're going to add data to the app. Okay, and we're going to add data that I already have loaded on my SaaS environment under data files. And we have a thing called video gaming inventory. Okay, and this is basically inventory of a list of video games that I have in my collection, let's say. Okay, that's available now. I'm going to go back into the data manager just to make this a little bit more complete. I also have a user rating for each of the games that are there. We'll add that as well. So right now we're in our data prep screen, and this is also Insight Advisor helping me understand the relationships between my tables. And you can see it's making a recommendation saying, I have an ID field inside inventory and an ID field inside user rating. Is this how you want to associate these two tables? And I do, so I'm just going to apply that and then load this data. I'm not going to spend too much time on data prep, but also just showing you some elements of our cognitive engine that is also working under the covers to help make data preparation easier as well. And it's not just looking at the same name of the field, it actually looks at the data values. So for example, if I actually had something called user ID, it would still know to use that because of the percentage of matched of data values between the two tables. And you can have a chance to override that as well. So now we have our fields. Now, business logic is going to automatically be enabled from the scanning of your data and through the use of creation and auto chart suggestions. As I mentioned, it learns over time as you start creating. But what we're going to do is we're going to completely wipe out business logic. Okay, I do want to show you it's enabled just simply by saying how many titles. You can see that all of this type ahead is helping me. Do we have? So let's say these are the amount of titles that I have completed in my inventory, 696. How many titles did I buy this year? So this year for 2020, I purchased 556 titles. How many titles this month? 10. Okay, so in the month of September, I've already purchased 10 titles, let's say. And some of these numbers are fudged, by the way, guys. Don't think I'm spending all my money on video games because, you know, even though I would love to do that, I do have 3 kids in college, and that hurts a little. No, but seriously. So a lot of this is enabled already for you, but at some point there might not be. So for example, let's look at user rating. And let's see what happens with user rating. Now see, I can just type in the field and it also shows me some information. So user rating right now, it's showing a count of user rating. Is that something I really want to do? Don't I want maybe the average user rating, for example? I don't want to count my user ratings. I actually want to see what is the average user rating of all the games inside my, my collection. So this is an example of where business logic can help. So let's go into our data manager, and you'll see that we have a new item in the menu here called business logic. So you can see the business logic currently in use for this app is generated by QlikSense. We can now preview and make edits to the model. So this is an overview of the fields and the master items, and there's other elements here called packages, hierarchies, and behaviors that I'll talk about, and groups and their types. And these are just logical groups that you then take and you put into packages and hierarchies and behaviors. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But this just gives you an overview of the logical model. Okay, so the other part to understand here is when I go into this, and what we're going to do here is now I'm going to start doing the split screen approach, and this is the best way that I found, brings this demonstration and makes some sense here. So let's pull this guy out here. Let's pull this guy out here. And what we're going to do is now we're going to take these two guys and we're going to put them side by side. And you're going to see how this works. So the one thing that I'd like to make sure we understand when we talk about this, do not get this confused with what's known as a traditional metadata layer or semantic layer that helps with data governance and helps create like a governed data library of reusable results. They're very similar to the master items. Because we say model and people hear data model and they think, oh, this is the elements that we use for report creation. It's not in this case. Like it is and it's not. This business logic is to make Insight Advisor smarter. Okay, so you keep repeating that to yourself. This is the area where we're going to tailor the results that come back from the automatic chart suggestions, recommendations, etc. Okay, so right now you can see that we have groups and then we have fields under groups. We have nothing under packages, nothing under hierarchies, nothing under behaviors. To make things simple, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to take what we talked about, user rating. And if we look at user rating, we can see user rating is visible. It's classified as a dimension. It has data lookup yes and default aggregation. Well, immediately I can change the classification. We have a number of different classifications for the measures and dimensions: Boolean, date, timestamp, year, quarter, week, etc. Geographical, ordinal, temporal, percentage. So in this case here, I just want to make this a measure. And for the default aggregation, I want to change this to average. Now this is pretty much real time. So in this case here, to make things simple, you can see the available fields within Insights. If I just select my user rating right now, notice how it now produced the average user rating instead of a table showing me individual user ratings. So right now, everybody who's paying attention should be shaking their head and say, ah, I get it now. And that's probably the most simplistic area that I can show you when it comes to just changing a simple classification of a measure. Okay, so now to elaborate on this, I'm just going to clear this entire group. And when I do that, I want you to look at what happens on the left where I'm circling. So I'm going to ungroup all of these elements. Now notice they all went away. Okay, these field items are what's available for our conversational analytics and what's available for our visual-based search. Okay, so now we can start creating logical groups of these elements. So for example, we're going to call this one location, and we're going to make this a dimension in all the areas that have to do with location. So we got city, we got country, we have state, we have store, type, user rating, let's see, quantity, platform, label. Okay, so let's say that's our dimension group for location. So I hit create. Now watch what happens. Pops up. Okay, let's create another group, and let's just call this one metrics. And these are going to be holding our measures. And in here we have our purchase price and our quantity. Let's create that one, and notice it pops up. Now we're going to create another group, and we're going to call this one game properties. Okay, so these are going to be the properties of the game, such as the critic rating, the user rating, the ID field, it's the condition, and the type. And this is going to be a dimension. And then the last one we're going to create is going to be the actual game itself of type dimension. If it uses a specific control, the developer that made it, the format, the genre, if it has a label, platform, and the title. And then lastly, we have a purchase date, and we're going to call this one just time. And we're going to make this of type calendar. Oh, I must have added it automatically. Let's see. So that one we're going to ungroup. And delivery date, we're going to ungroup. And then we're going to create a group, and we're going to call this one time, and we're going to add our delivery date in there. And this is going to be of type calendar. Okay, so now we've set up our logical groups, and now we can ask questions on all of these dimensions and measures based off of what we set in here. Now, I just realized something. I don't want to use ID because that's not important to me. So we can go into this visibility field, and we can change that to hidden. And notice the ID went away. So for those of you who missed it, if I go back to visibility, there's ID, and there's hidden. Now it's gone again. Okay, so at this point, we don't have to have that displayed or used with any of the conversational analytics. You could also just leave it out of the group. So that's what visibility does. You saw what classification does in regards to setting up a default aggregation and default measure, but also want to show you some of the significance with some of the geographical. So notice city and country are automatically produced and classified. Watch what happens if I just make country a dimension, and I go in here and we select country. Sometimes you have to kind of refresh inside of Visor by just switching back and forth. If I select country, notice it now just creates a table of countries. And if I wanted to look at, let's say, the count of titles that were sold or purchased from each countries, I'm just getting dimensional based information. But now if I produce country and make it an actual classification as a country, and now we select country this time, it's actually going to create a geographical map this time around. Okay, so it actually will use the classification to produce the visualization that is, more or important to the question, or more relevant to the question in that case here. So here we can say purchase price, which is now classified as a measure. Okay, so I'm assuming everybody's, understanding at this point, talking about the power of the cognitive engine, working with Insight Advisor, and just reiterating, restating what I'm talking about, producing those results and tailoring those results by utilizing the capabilities within business logic. And you looked at fields and groups so far, and we talked about the classifications. Now I'm going to show you data lookup, and we also talked about default aggregations. Data lookup, value lookup, yes and no, basically allows you to turn off the data lookup values when you're using the type ahead. So for example, I know that there is a field called value called orange. So there's a video game title called Orange Box, and there's a city called Orange City. Well, if I wanted to turn off lookup, for example, for city, I say no. And now the next time I type in orange, notice that it only shows me the title now. It's not using the capability of looking up the values for the city. So at this point, you can control within your visual-based search the questions that are asked, what values are actually populated in the type ahead versus which values aren't. Okay, so I think that pretty thoroughly covers fields and groups. How am I doing on time, Brian? A few more minutes? You guys are probably on mute.
Yeah, I think we've got a few minutes, Mike.
Okay, good. So, so we created our fields and groups. So once you create your logical groups, then there's something called packages, and packages are collections of groups. Okay, and then you could use this to relate to other data models. Okay, now I haven't explored too much how the packages works, but when you start creating packages, then basically what you're doing is you're associating these related groups and data models together. Okay, and basically the type of results that are produced, like for example, tree maps or bar charts or scatter plots, starts to learn and works together with those particular groups. I'll probably have more information on this in future videos as I start to learn the product more. Hierarchies are drill down relationships for the automatic levels. So for example, I can create a hierarchy of my location, for example, and my games. And we can just call this, just call it product H. And what this will do is when I ask a particular question within the field, it'll allow me to drill into those different levels. For example, if it automatically produces a tree chart, a tree map, or something that allows you to drill in further that has a parent-child type relationship. And the behaviors is also something that we've added where you could actually force a number of different behaviors. So for example, for my metrics group, okay, in this case, meaning my quantity and my purchase price, we can have a required selection, a preferred relationship, and deny relationship. In this case here, I'm just going to show you one that I am aware of, the required selection. And we could force it to be multiple values or single values. In this case here, it's going to be a single value. And we're going to force it to be type. And then the value is going to be looking at only games. So we click create. And this creates a behavior now. When I search for a particular measure, in this case here, it's going to automatically force it to the filter value of game. So if I say how many titles, okay, you can see automatically required field is game. Now I can go in here and change this to consoles or accessory, but at this point here, it's forcing this particular value within my selection. Okay, so this determines a scope, would also enforces value selections. Now, I haven't really explored the other options yet. For example, for required selection, preferred relationship, you can see the preferred relationship uses a particular group. So we can try this real time right now and just see what happens under the covers. Okay, yeah, see what happened here? It's now using the preferred relationship of location, and you can see the metrics that are coming back are now being related to the values that are inside that particular group, in this case, country. I'll have more information on this as well. Let's see if I delete this one here. So what we're going to do here is I'm just going to delete this, and then we're going to be done. Let's see. Let's force that. Yeah, I need a little bit more learning on this one to understand a little bit more about this. But that's pretty much business logic in a nutshell. There's a lot more to explore and to understand, more than just what a half hour can show, but it gives you a good understanding of how we auto-produce and auto-suggest through the Insight Advisor using the cognitive engine, and then how you can tailor those results by using this utility. And a lot more is coming in the release, such as synonym names. So for example, if you call the name as title, well, maybe I want to refer to it as game instead of title. That can be done today. It's done in the script editor right at this moment using the alt tags. So for example, here I can come in and just put in like, tag, field, title, and then give it the value that I want with alt : game or something like that. It can be done. It's in the help. But basically, if you have other ways of referencing field names within a question, you can put those right now currently in the script editor, but there'll be a vocabulary section in here coming soon. Okay, guys, that's all I have.
That's great, Mike. Thanks very much. I think many of us applauded the usage of Insight Advisor when it first came along, but we did I think a lot of us felt like we didn't have much control about what it was producing. So this seems, like you say, making Insight Advisor a bit more controllable and configuring it to actually give the answers that you want is quite a powerful tool, I would say.
Absolutely.
Andrew, did you have any questions lined up there in the chat?
Yeah, we've got a few good questions, Mike. Can I just ask, is this available now in the September SaaS version? Yeah.
It is. And if we run out of time for questions, just send them to me and I'll answer them individually through email. So I just want to make sure everybody knows that we will get to your question, but I don't want to take up too much time for George as well.
No, it's okay. We've got time. We've got 4 questions so far, I think. The first question was, is the Insight Advisor just Insight Bot rebranded? Which is an interesting question because I was always confused myself.
That is a very good question.
Insight Bot.
So Ask Insight Advisor is actually all brand new. It's not Insight Bot under the covers. Insight Bot, as you know, right now is a Windows only. It's still available. But this Insight Advisor is all brand new technology. I mean, I'm sure it's based off of, concepts that Insight Advisor brought over when we acquired Crunchbot, but this is all completely brand new.
Okay. And how many languages does it support?
It is
English?
No, it is multi-language. I just don't, I know Spanish, German, French, French. There's like 3 or 4 more. I can get the exact ones if necessary, but there is multi-language.
Yeah. Okay. Question for myself, will there be training available for this in continuous classroom?
I would assume so. There should be. As you can see, I mean, what I went through today, it is something that is not, flicking on a little switch to see a different chart type or something. There is a lot more involved in here, but I don't know for sure, but I'm assuming.
Yeah, I really appreciate if you're able to find that one out. Pedro's asking, will the business logic persist across different applications?
That's the goal in the future. Right now, it's per application.
Okay. One more question's just come in. Any plans to converge Insight Bot and Insight Advisor into a single product?
I don't know. I believe, if anything, at this point, Insight Advisor Chat is going to come over to the Windows side in the future. And I guess they possibly will retire Insight Bot. I don't know the plans exactly on the convergence.
So that this would be in line with Insight Advisor Chat being a SaaS type of offering, right, Mike? And
correct.
And integrates much more into the overall platform infrastructure than Insight Bot itself. Yeah.
Correct.
And sorry, very last question. Did you mention Russian as one as a supported language?
I think it is. But if not, like I said, I can get those back. It's for some reason it's not in my PowerPoint either. That shows the multiple languages, but I can get those.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
My pleasure, guys.
Another really good summary there, Mike, and I think that it's really important to focus on these important parts of new functionality, and I really like what you're doing for us in terms of keying in on those specific points of functionality rather than giving the general overview. I think it's a great thing for us to have, and we're very privileged to have you on again. So thanks very much, Mike.
I appreciate that. Would I take a moment just to do a shameless plug? Okay, so I hold a session every other Thursday. We call it Do More with Qlik. So what I just like to do is just bring up that screen real quick and just show this where it is on our website. Just to show you the webinar series, I'm actually going to be covering our augmented intelligence capabilities. Is the screen not updating? Oh my God, are you serious? Sorry, guys. There it is. So there's a sign-on page for this. It's a new webinar series called Do More with Qlik. It's actually, we're on our 8th episode. And the reason we're bringing this up is that it's not just the dog and pony show of something that I'd like to show you guys. It's something where you, the customer, the community member, the partner can also join me on a session and highlight and demonstrate a partner solution, a application, a success story, and share it with the rest of the other Qlik enthusiasts in the world. For some reason, the registration page is not coming up right now, so I'll have to find out what's going on there. But
why don't you pop the link in
for it?
It's well, on. It should, and then guys can pick it up from there as well.
Every now
if you
and
want
then
to copy it in the chat, please.
Yeah, I'll do that for. I appreciate that. I'll put that in the chat. Let's stop sharing my screen.
Sure.
And let's go to the chat. All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much, guys. I actually got to run because now I got to do some work on a Gartner spreadsheet. It's that time
No
of year
worries,
again.
Mike. Thanks very much.
All right,
Thank you.
guys. Thank you. It was a
Thank you.
pleasure. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Enjoy everything. Take care.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Mike never seems to disappoint, and it's great to have him back for a third time. Another great presentation there. So we successfully negotiated Q&A for Mike, so that brings us on to our second guest. And for our second guest, we've got George Firican from Lights on Data. And again, I've chatted to George a few times during these COVID times, and you know, he's a really great person to know. You've probably seen him a lot on his. He likes taking videos even when he's on vacation, so I like that about it too. So George, you know, you're obviously, you know, a key man in the data governance area, and obviously Lights on Data, your company are very well known as well. But today I believe you're here to talk about the topic of dark data, which we're excited to find out a bit more about here at QVMS. So I'll hand it over to you, George, to say hello.
Thank you, Will, and hello everybody. Let me just share my screen here and start my presentation if you don't mind.
Sure.
And there you go. And thank you again for having me. It's a pleasure. I've never been to Scotland, unfortunately. So, you know, why am I still living? I need to get there. And to be honest, it was planned for next year initially. So we have some friends that are close by to near Glasgow, but you never know. Anyways, you know, we're hoping. We're still hoping.
Don't go to Glasgow. Come to Edinburgh. That's the best choice.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you. I need to ask you for recommendations for sure. So dark data and its hidden potential, that's what I'm here to talk to you about. A little bit quickly about myself. I am George. Yeah, that's my happy face. I, like Brian mentioned, I am a data governance practitioner. I also work in data management. So I've been doing this for 10 plus years and I love what I do. I'm working with a wonderful group of people doing really one of the things that I love. And if you don't know me already, I can tell you that I'm very exuberant and passionate about data governance, data management, data visualization. So I'm also a frequent speaker and writer, contributor, YouTuber. It was mentioned I do like to take in those videos even when I am on vacation, even though I still talk about data stuff. So as much as possible, I do try to provide really practical information to help one with, you know, all of the questions and challenges that they have around these areas. So please, I encourage you to check out lightsondata.com. I also feature some great contributors and writers as well. Or if you prefer, again, content in video format, just check out my YouTube channel as I publish every Thursday, or just follow me on LinkedIn and I promise you will not be disappointed. So today's topic, dark data. We're gonna go over really what it is. And what I do encourage you to do in the chat is when you think of dark data, what comes to mind? What's one of the first few things? What are those keywords that come to mind when you hear of dark data? So we're going to go over that. We're going to see why do we have it? What are those reasons why we have it in place? What are the risks for having it? And what are those hidden benefits, those benefits for taking advantage of dark data? And then we're just going to conclude the session. So, well, let's start at the beginning, because I think that's kind of the question that's on everybody's mind. What is dark data? And as I mentioned, because I'm a data governance professional, providing clarity and a common definition on the terms is really a critical deliverable. And of course, we want to start with that definition. Crime, yes. And thank you so much, Andrew, for kind of mentioning that, because a lot of the times, the dark web, it's kind of the most obvious answers that comes into people's mind when they hear about dark data. They really equate it to the dark web, right? And for those of you that don't know, though I doubt there are many, the dark web is really a part of the internet that's not indexed by search engines. So you've also no doubt heard talk that the dark web is a hotbed of criminal activity, and it kind of is. I mean, you can buy stolen credit card numbers, all manner of, you know, drugs and guns and stolen subscription credentials, hacked Netflix accounts, software that helps you break into other people's computers, whole bunch of stuff. You know, I was reading this one article that you can buy sort of a $50,000 Bank of America account for just $500. You can get $3,000 in counterfeit $20 bills for $600. Get prepaid credit cards and so forth and so on. But of course, it's, you know, not all illegitimate, but out of all things, kind of excluding those selling drugs, 60% apparently of what you find on the dark web could potentially harm enterprises. Okay, so back to our dark data. Again, something that all this data that stems from the dark web would be dark data. And you're not necessarily wrong, but I'll get to that. The other thought is that it's just really bad data. And it's, you know, it's just a synonym for bad data, and not bad as in harmful in the way that some of the information and services that you can purchase off the dark web, but more in the sense of bad quality data, so poor data quality. And to be honest, I think that at times bad quality data can be more harmful to our organization than some of the information on the dark web. And the last one maybe is a bit more funny. If you're a fan on Stranger Things, the Netflix show, and if you haven't watched the show, there's this concept of this, you know, upside down world where evil lurks in. And no, strange data doesn't come from this fictional place, but it can refer to kind of weird and also funny data sets. And I'll give you some examples. There's this data set that you can get for free from the World Sport Stacking Association. And if you don't know the stacking, you basically have these plastic cups and you keep stacking one on top of each other and then bringing them down really quickly. So they have contests on that, really marathons too. And kind of really this data set allows you to search through different divisions, age groups, competitors, you know, country records, so forth and so on. Then you get all the UFO sightings. There's like 80,000 historical data sets of UFO sightings that are collected over almost a century. There's a data set containing the names of all registered dogs in Zurich. There's a data set that tracks all the cats featured in movies. I think my favorite, to be honest, my favorite strange data set is this one that rates burritos for their volume, tortilla quality. It basically all the burritos in San Diego, and they have all these, you know, 10 different dimension system for rating those burritos. And as I mentioned, you know, volume, tortilla quality, salsa quality, the wrap integrity, it's fun. All right, so back to that question, right? What is dark data? And as Gardner puts it, it's really information assets that a company collects, they process it, they store it, but they fail to use it for really any purpose. So, you know, dark data might also be data from the dark web, yes. Deloitte actually acknowledges that dark data extends into information that can be found in the deep web and the dark web. And it could also be bad data, you know, bad quality data for sure. I'm sure it's not clean. And it could also be strange data, especially if those data sets are just collected and nobody's using them. So that would be dark data. One example I kind of like to look at is that dark data is kind of like all the photos on your mobile phone, right? Most of them will never be used. You won't view them again, but they're there. I'm sure you have quite a few. You know, it's estimated by Jigome that the average person has 630 photos stored on their phone. And this was in 2015. Back in 2017, InfoTrends estimated that there were over 1.2 trillion photos taken every year on a mobile phone. And obviously that number keeps on increasing. Considering how cheap storage is becoming, especially the cloud services, I think this number is only going to go up. I know for my phone, you know, I just pay Apple my, what was it, like $1.99 a month to have I don't know how many more gigs of storage in the cloud. And I don't even look anymore at the photos that I'm storing there. I mean, it could even be photos that I've taken by accident as I was putting my phone in my pocket. And just because it's so cheap, I rarely go through them and delete them. So that's really a good example of dark data. Now, a good example is the sensors data. Data that's produced by sensors and analog to digital conversions, it really never gets used. So based on IBM's estimate, about 90% of that sensor data would be dark data. The way I like to think of it as well is kind of the dark side of the moon. You know, it's there, you never go to it really. In general, dark data kind of represents all the information that companies collect, again, during the regular business processes they don't use, they don't have any plans to use, but they will never, ever throw out. So it's things like your log files, your web logs, your visitor tracking data, surveillance footage, email correspondence from past employees, or raw survey data, or even old versions of presentations, notes, documents. Even this one presentation that I'm sharing with you, I have a previous version that I was working through, and then I sort of changed some stuff. I'm probably not going to delete that, but I'm never going to use it either. So that's kind of unstructured dark data, if you will. But because you're kind of hearing all of this, right, you might think of big data. And it's true. I mean, arguably, dark data is a subset of big data. And not only, as we can see, I think from this graph from KD Nuggets, the area that's shown in black there kind of indicates dark data. And the image really illustrates the notional percentage of dark data that is present at any time. And yes, as you can see on the right-hand side, dark data is the biggest portion under big data, but it can also be part of the traditional enterprise data, such as customer data, employee data, maybe even transactional data. Because we're in a Star Wars theme today, apparently, I had to have this one slide, because as Yoda said, there is another. And sorry, I can't do a Yoda impression, but there is another definition that I want to quickly go over. And that's that it's any data that's collected for a specific purpose, but then it's not used for other suitable purposes as well. And I think it's worthwhile to just take an example from this. And I want to take this healthcare example. So there's definitely a lot of data that's being produced and collected from smart devices like our cell phones and tablets and smart thermostats and humidifiers, even virtual assistants like Google and the other one from Amazon that I can't mention because I have it sitting next to me and it will pop up if I do. Every time we use our GPS, every time we use our checking function on Facebook, or tracking our calories in a phone app, or I think you get where I'm going. There's definitely a lot of data that's being collected by these devices that aren't necessarily collected for the purpose of healthcare. So from a healthcare's point of view, that's kind of dark data. And in that sense, we as individuals create a lot of dark data. And to a hospital, to a healthcare professional, all this data that you're generating is dark data because it's not collected nor used for the purpose of healthcare, not by them, that is. But it could be, and because it could be, they would consider it dark data. But I wouldn't want to stay away from this definition, to be honest, because then anything and everything could become and considered dark data. So maybe I think that's maybe a bit too broad. But even going back to our original definition, there's definitely a lot of dark data. As we can see from this infographic, I know there's a lot to digest here, but the takeaway here is that the entire digital universe is estimated to be 44 zettabytes this year. And if this number is correct, it will mean that there are 40 times more bytes than there are stars in the observable universe. That's a lot of data. And IBM really indicates that 93% of it is dark data. That's definitely quite a number. Other estimates also mention that dark data comprises more than half of the data that's collected by companies. So no matter how you slice it, there's definitely quite a bit of dark data going around. So why is that? Why do we have dark data? And sorry, I just want to check on my time here, see how I'm doing. All right. So why do we have it? And there's a few reasons. I think there's about a handful of reasons that I can think of. First one is that there's just different priorities. You know, let's just take the example of a bank that's analyzing its online applications for credit cards. So the credit card marketing team is really focused solely on the customer details and their eligibility, but they really pay no attention to the data on how the customer arrived to that application page, kind of the web analytics, if you will. And that unattended data, that dark data, could have really provided some valuable insights on the usability of that bank website and the application page. But there's no priority assigned to that aspect. And there's definitely a lot of organizations not investing in web analytics as one example, even though they are capturing and they are storing it, right? They have access to the Google Analytics. They're like, yeah, let's just store it. Maybe we'll even save it somewhere so we can just have it in proprietary, you know, for as long as we want to, but they're never going to use it, or at least not all of it. So that's one reason why companies collect stuff just in case, but they're not doing anything with it. The other one is really, and that's kind of my favorite, the lack of data governance. Because when you don't have data governance, there's a higher chance that your organization is operating in silos. And in a lot of organizations, actually, departments have their own data collection and storage processes, which may not be known to other departments. So I don't know what my neighbor is doing. They don't know what I'm doing, what I'm collecting, what I'm doing with that data. And this data might, again, be collected and remain unseen and unused, even if it's relevant to other departments, and it could be used by other departments. And it's because they don't have a process to even find out about it, let alone use it. And from their perspective, it is dark data, or even from the organization perspective. Now, another reason it would be that poor data quality, because the data collected could be incomplete, could be potentially inaccurate, or there's a lack of trust in it due to a lack of data governance and unclarity on how it was collected in the first place. So even if you have important customer information about a transaction, but it's maybe missing location or other important metadata, because that information sits somewhere else or was never captured in a usable format, then you're like, well, I can't do anything with it. I'm missing that, so I'm not going to use it. I've seen this, for example, a lot of in a lot of the company's databases on their customers, they're capturing their year of birth, which is great because they're able to track that age. But then they're unable to, you know, send a personal happy birthday message on their birthday. Or I've also noticed that they track the month of their birth to maybe try and target a campaign. But again, it doesn't offer enough information to do something more with it, to maybe use that information to cleanse your database and see, well, how many people are over 120 years old? Anyways, I could talk about this for hours. Data quality, it's one of my likings. Another reason would be really constraints. So if data collection is done by separate technologies and tools in the same organization, there might be cases when these technologies and tools don't interact with each other because of those technological constraints. So for example, it might be difficult to integrate an audio file from a call center, and obviously its contents, with Qlik data from websites. And not having a tool to analyze the dark data is kind of listed as the #1 reason why companies aren't using dark data, at least according to this company called Data Noise. Or there might be a lack of knowledge, a lack of skills on how to integrate this data, how to analyze it, how to drive meaning from it. It could be that they only know how to use structured data. And that's kind of, I think, the most case for a lot of companies that have not fully started their data science, data analytics journey. And yes, the data gets collected because maybe others are doing it and the company wants to capture it for future use when they will have those capabilities to use it. And yes, the larger the data set is, the more sophisticated the tool required for analysis. So there's definitely constraints there. And lastly, and I think I've touched upon this before, and I think it's maybe the most obvious, is the fact that in the grand scheme of things, it's really inexpensive to store it, right? At times, that's why we even have so many photos on our phones, as I mentioned. Before the era of the film camera, we would kind of think twice of taking a photo. And when we would come back from vacation, we maybe have a couple of rolls of films, and now we come with hundreds of photos. I'll give you this one example as well, taken from this one company that I was working at and their intranet. Whenever there was a storage limit that a company would reach for their intranet, they would be more likely to pay for a new, just a few more gigabytes of storage, of memory, just to be added than kind of scouring the existing files and documents and data downloads, whatever it was stored on that intranet, because it was really a lot more challenging, so much more time and effort than just paying a little bit more for some extra storage. But that's where we're sort of heading into the risks of having it. What happens when we just keep on keeping it? The problem is, well, firsthand, legal and regulatory, because as a result of data deluge, really companies often don't know where all their sensitive data is stored and can be confident that they are complying with consumer data protection measures like GDPR. And with GDPR, and I'm not an expert on GDPR to be honest, but it's mentioned that personal data can only be gathered legally under strict conditions for a legitimate purpose. So that means that storing data just in case is just not cutting it anymore. And so businesses need to show how they're protecting their customers' data in order to avoid hefty fines, if you think about it. And it's not about GDPR. As another example, if part of this dark data is covered by legal regulations, such as a credit card data, exposure of such data could throw companies into financial and legal liabilities. And according to a survey from Gemalto, which is a security company, 46% of executives believe their company do not know where all the sensitive or private information is stored. It's amazing, right? I was reading this one article. This was back in 2018 when Twitter announced that they had this one bug that meant that their user passwords were actually stored unmasked in internal logs. And they obviously find that out. Until they did and removed it, that was really dark data because they weren't using it from the internal logs. And it was stored there by accident or, because of this bug. And obviously would have opened a whole can of worms if somebody would have been able to probe into that data and use it. Obviously, there's a risk, again, of reputation loss because companies, for the most part, are viewed as custodians and stewards of the data that they collect. So any loss of data, especially sensitive and confidential data, can result in a loss of reputation. Just, I think it was last year, Hyper, which it is or was an apparently trusted marketing partner of Facebook and Instagram, was secretly collecting and storing locations for millions of users, which was against the policies of the social networks. And it was taking Instagram stories that were supposed to disappear after 24 hours, and they were effectively making them permanent and just storing them in a database and then renting it out to brands. So until they were actually able to profit from it, they were just storing massive amounts of it to be able to draw some analysis from it at one point. But during that period of time, that could be considered dark data. Obviously, it got them into quite a bit of trouble. And the last one is the cost of storage and that opportunity cost. Because the global cost of dark data is expected to reach $3.3 trillion US in 2020. Veritas actually estimates that it costs the average mid-sized organization, which is holding maybe 1,000 terabytes of data, more than $650,000 annually to store non-critical information. And that's definitely a vast amount of money to spend on something that you're not going to use. And as I mentioned, beyond the actual cost of storage, the management of dark data also eats up valuable resources. I mean, all electronically stored data is vulnerable to legal discovery. So if a potential litigation emerges, how much time and energy will it take to pull customer conversations out of storage if you do have it, right? And how useful is it to have it? Maybe it is, and that's why you're having it. And yes, I think pruning dark data can definitely reduce storage maintenance costs. It could definitely save your business thousands of dollars a year. And there's also that opportunity cost, right? If a company decides not to invest in the analysis and processing of dark data, but its competitors do, then its competitors are more likely to inch ahead in that competition because of the usage and insights from dark data. And that is the cost of the company is paying because of the lost opportunities. So let's inch away into those benefits, into what are those hidden reasons on maybe why might be good to extract information out of this dark data. And I want to put this out there, and if you can in the chat, I'll get to this at the end, this one example, but try and figure out what are you seeing here? What do you think this image represents? And again, I'll get to that as the last example. And I'll start with one of my favorites. This I think this is yes, this is an image of New York. And you can sort of see all these tweets going out around from the city. And there's this great story because a research team from the University of Rochester created this algorithm that can spot flu trends and make predictions based on keywords in publicly available geotag tweets. Like in this example, right? You can see one says, Daddy Jazz said, stuffy nose, feeling miserable. Another one, I feel awful, I need some soup. Oh, I have a dry nose and I'm coughing. So what they've done, basically, they were scouring all these, all this unstructured data, all these tweets that were not meant to be used for healthcare reasons. And was basically their algorithm was able to track the spread of flu and predict which users are going to get sick next. Arguably, it could also be used to track the spread of COVID, but I haven't followed up to see if they've done anything on that. But isn't that amazing, right? It's sort of finding another purpose for something that before it was just, putting messages out there in the void, sometimes for nobody to see, other times to have conversations and interactions, but definitely not to be able to predict how flu is sort of spreading from not just one place to another, but from one individual to another. So I thought that was really fascinating. This one example comes from this European logistics company that's operating more than 30 warehouses in Spain. And they just basically wanted to gain a deeper operational understanding of the activity in its facilities in order to sustain and increase their productivity, in order to ensure security of staff and goods and optimize the processing of work orders. So basically just to create more efficiencies. And they really managed to do this by tapping into the dark data that was collected by their Wi-Fi infrastructure, which in turn, it was collecting things from their workers, from the devices that their workers were carrying, from the devices that were attached to the equipment. And they collected data such as, again, a device location, presence, and motion. That was kind of the gist of it. And by tapping into this data, really allowed them to know things such as the precise location of their vehicles, what the population was in distinct areas, and heat maps and flow maps, and their worker arrival, departure, when they were on breaks, and different productivity metrics such as the time between different operations. And by using and harnessing all this data that was, these devices were communicating with one another. They definitely had this network in place, but they were not doing anything with it. And they were able to achieve all these things that they were aiming to achieve. All right. I want to go back to this one. I want to see if anybody sort of answered in here. there's a lot of comments in the chat here, so I'll need to go back on that. And yes, Brian, it's data that Hopper from Stranger Things kind of thinks about. Exactly. And that was Hopper in the image. Water tower, yeah, and aliens. So kind of is. So actually, so it's a grid of satellite images, and each square depicts an oil tank that's photographed across multiple weeks. And you see, a while ago, the US wanted to better estimate China's oil supply. And this company called Orbital Insight, I think they're one of the suppliers that provides these images to Google, the satellite images, that is, which get refreshed, by the way, every 6 months, every year. Kind of depends, though Google has definitely a lot more data that's updated frequently that they have access to. It just takes them a time to get out to the public. But anyways, so Orbital Insight, by looking at the changes in the shadows that was cast by the floating roofs of these oil tanks, the analysts could estimate how much oil was available in all these tanks that it was monitoring, right? Because again, the oil tank had this floating roof. As the oil was depleting, the roof was dropping, and then they could see the shadow getting bigger, different time of the day, of course, getting bigger and larger on being casted on that rooftop. And they've devised a formula on how they could relate to this to the volume that was still available in that oil tank. And by the way, Orbital Insight, it's kind of using, let's say, this dark data for other purposes as well. They're monitoring parking lots for supermarkets. So they're able then to predict out of the cars that are parked in the supermarket that day, and the changes in how many leave, how many come back, how many spots are available. They're able to estimate a lot quicker, even before the till stops registering. They're able to tell that supermarket, that store, how much money, okay, approximately, but it's a very good approximation of how much money they've earned that day, just by doing that analysis. And this is in the US because everybody drives there. All right. I think I'm approaching my time here. I did have another example, but I do want to, get to the conclusion here, see if there's any questions that I could answer. And I want to give you some pointers also. If you do have dark data, which you most likely do, what are some of the steps that you should take? And the first step is obviously to identify it and see, was it generated by people? Was it generated by a machine? Then definitely try and classify it, because you want to identify any important data that stored and that stores that regulated information. Then you want to do that cost benefit analysis and see, is it really worth keeping it on? Then of course you want to make a business case for what you want to keep, what you want to get away with, what you want to get rid of, and definitely make sure that dark data is on your regular disposition schedule. So that's about it. Let me know if you do have any questions that I would be able to answer. Let's see here.
Thank you very much, George. That was really insightful, because I think dark data and the dark web and terminology like this, we all seem to think that we know what that is, and to actually have it clarified for us, I think, was really useful. And we try to reach the edges of data conversation here at QVMS. So yes, we're all Qlik guys and gals, but we want to learn more about these edge topics, and I think this is a very important one as well. So thank you for that. Andrew, do you have any questions in the chat there that you'd like to?
Yeah, there's a few, including a few from yourself, Brian, which will probably leave you to
Sure.
do that. So one from me, and then I'll read out another one that's just come in. There's obviously a lot of conversation. Everybody talks about big data. It's the latest buzzword. Will dark data ever be talked about to the same extent as big data? And if not, why? Surely there's opportunities for companies to make money from the dark data if they can just analyze it or find a way to make it. This will probably lead into Brian's question, to make it less dark.
Exactly, yeah. So as I mentioned, dark data is part of big data. It's really a subset of it. It's that subset that never gets used. And it's probably a lot higher than what the graph was showing there. It was just conceptually. But I think the web analytics is really a perfect example that can be considered big data for sure. But there's, again, quite a bit of it that's not getting used at all. I'm guilty of that. I know for my website, I'm collecting that data. I haven't looked at it yet. But once I'm using it, it's going to, just drop its dark aspect of it and just become big data instead.
Okay. Sarah's asking, how do you go about accessing the dark web? It's a controversial question. I don't know if you want to.
Sarah, they do offer, apparently, you can buy Netflix subscriptions for like $6 for a lifetime. So maybe it's worth checking it out. So you actually need to download this Tor client, T-O-R, and with it, it's kind of its own browser, if you will. You're then able to access this side of the web. And that's it. You can do your own Google search there and find the steps on how you can do that.
Okay. Brian's got a few questions as well. Brian, I don't know if you want to ask George yourself. Or...
Yeah, sure. So dark data, I think you mentioned it a little bit there, the transition from dark data to big data is it when you discover it, or is it when you discover it and you're able to analyze it in some way? Because discovering it is different from being able to actually do something with it, right? So
Absolutely.
Where's the differentiation?
Yeah, I think it's that usage piece. So once you do analyze it, once you draw something out of it, then that's when it drops its darkness, if you will. That's when it stops being dark data.
And just sort of tied on to that is data stewardship. So obviously, quite a lot of companies have data stewards, but to my knowledge, that's looking after data that they know about. Are you seeing more of data stewardship being about understanding what dark data is in an organization and surfacing that to effectively reduce the unknown, if you like, the amount of data that's in an organization? So yeah, is that typically like a consultancy job, or is it a full-time role that you see?
It's both. A lot of consultants, especially actually companies that offer data classification services, they're sort of aiming to help you with that, to try and identify data that you might not even know that it exists. And surprisingly, there's a lot of managers that are saying that, you know what, we're not even sure if we're collecting that type of data. And there are people in the company that they're not sure. I mean, somebody would know, I would assume, at one point. But yes, more and more, besides the consultancies and the data classification services, they're trying to assign data stewards on doing a bit of a more investigative work and find out what don't they know, to find out what other pieces of data that might be helpful for them that they're collecting that they are not yet aware of, that it's not yet documented at least. So that's part of the first piece, that identifying piece, and then classifying it to see what type of data it is, and then to see, well, this is dark data, this is probably something that we're not going to use. Let's decide to either throw it out, dispose of it, or let's try and draw some meaning out of it, and thus shedding the darkness of it.
I think there's an interesting point right at the end there about the crossover between kind of dark data and GDPR. I think is the point that it's getting against there, the invasion of privacy. So when does dark data that's being collected from all these sensors, once it becomes surfaced, does it become a contravention of GDPR if you didn't know it was being collected? I think there's a whole ethical conversation there that we're not going to be able to cover, but I think the key topic there is the invasion of privacy, and how you see kind of analysis of big data like that becoming an invasion of privacy if it's dark data to begin with.
No, absolutely. And again, there's sort of, let's say, two types of dark data, if you will. There's that the company doesn't even know that it's collecting, kind of lost track of it. And definitely that could be not in compliance with GDPR, for example. But there's the other part that, no, they are collecting it. They have the approval of the end user that's producing it, that they're collecting it from. But then they're just storing it. They're not doing anything with it. And depending what that data is, yes, that could also not be in compliance with GDPR.
Yes, the big
Sorry?
ones. Brian, in the UK, they've just launched a few of the contact tracing apps for COVID.
Yes.
And now that's obviously being enabled in a large number of smartphones with location services, tracking people, and masses of data now being collected that nobody really knows what's happening to that data.
Exactly. And yeah, and it depends on the app as well. I know there are some launched by several governments that they're saying they're not collecting any data. They're sort of using this hashtag key. Anyways, hash key, sorry. I don't quite understand the ins and outs of how it works, but they're mentioning they're not collecting any data, but they're just using the as is location. As soon as you're crossing somebody with a similar key, then it transfers information between them to talk, but then it disappears right away. And it's just a way to be notified if somebody was being in close presence with you that might have been infected or not.
Okay,
Well, I
good
think,
stuff. I think that was all, Brian. Yeah.
Great, a really varied and wide discussion there, and like I say, we really enjoy touching these topics. So thanks again, George. We really appreciate you stepping in and talking to the group, and I'm sure the group agree as well. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you again for having me.
You're more than welcome. More than welcome. Okay, I'm just gonna pop my screen up for a second here. Hopefully, I can get all my stuff back together. So well done, George. Managed to get through your QA. Good job. So just a bit of a wrap up for us, guys. We know we've run a little bit over, but we've run pretty well to time, which is really good. So am I sharing, by the way? I'm not sure if I am.
No.
I am. Yeah.
Not
Okay.
yet.
Cool. So we're still running every 2 weeks at the moment. Again, episode 11 is on the way, and that will happen on the 25th of September. And yeah, we kind of pride ourselves on the caliber of our guests, and we like to think that we're maintaining standards. So we've got 2 more very influential data leaders the next time around. The first one of those is Kate Strachnyi, and if you've ever been on LinkedIn, you probably know exactly who Kate is. She's the head of Datacated and Story by Data. And the Datacated conference is coming soon, and Kate's been working extremely hard on a lot of online courses. She's also a LinkedIn top voice in data science and LinkedIn Live. So we're really proud to have Kate. And Andrew, I believe you've been doing a little bit of work with Kate in the background as well. So it'd be great to get your take on things as well. So first, that's an incredible start, but we think we've matched that with our second guest, who is Julie Kay from Qlik. She's the executive director of Qlik.org and also the global head of CSR, corporate social responsibility. And again, I think Andrew's got pretty close ties with both of these kind of wonderful data leaders. So we're really looking forward to episode 11, and we'd encourage you to register now at QVMS EP11. We hope to see you on Friday, 25th of September. And if you do have any opinions on our podcast, then you can pop opinions onto TinyCC QVMS opinions. But apart from that, I really just want to thank again to our incredible guests, Mike Tarallo and George Firican, both tremendous presentations. And just to sort of hand it over to Andrew to say a closing word as well.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Obviously, repeat what Brian said there. George, I could listen to that talk about dark data again and again. It's so interesting because I'd actually never, to be honest, I'd never really heard of dark data until you volunteered for this, and I started to look up a few articles, including Wikipedia, which is yeah, very interesting topic. And obviously, Mike has dropped off as up to his usual standard and revealed another interesting part of Qlik Sense that we all need to learn. So yeah, so thanks for both of them.
Yeah, thanks very much, guys. All that remains for us is to say thank you for coming, and we hope to see you in 2 weeks' time on the 25th. Thank you, everyone, and have a great and safe weekend. Cheers.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay.